Did you know that the National Collegiate Athletic Association, more commonly known as the NCAA, made $1.06 billion in revenue, resulting in the organization to make a profit of $105 million in 2018. What's astonishing about that $105 million, though, is that none of it went to the athletes, who are the literal reason for these earnings. In fact, if you're an athlete under the NCAA, it's illegal for you to make any money off of your athletic performances, advertisements, or appearances. This is an apparent abuse of power by the NCAA and is fully taking advantage of their athletes' talents, time, and abilities. For reasons including the amount of time athletes dedicate to their sports, sacrificing their mental and physical health, and others, are clause enough for us as fans and spectators to stand up for these athletes who are being taken advantage of. We owe it to them to demand the NCAA to pay these talented individuals what they so deserve. The main reason NCAA athletes should be paid for their athletic seasons is because they spend roughly between 30 to 40 hours, sometimes even close to 50, a week dedicated solely to sports and sports-related activities. In the article, "Here's the Insane Amount of Time Student Athletes Spend on Practice," author Peter Jacobs states, "Many student athletes reported that they practice at least 30 hours a week on average, with some sports reporting weekly practice commitments of more than 40 hours. This amount of time equates to the same amount of hours that a regular college student working either a part-time or full-time job would work. And it turns out most college students are working either a part-time or full-time job." In his article, the NCAA says paying athletes hurts their education. That's laughable. Patrick Kirby states, "Between 70 to 80% of college students are active in the labor market, with roughly 40% of undergraduates working at least 30 hours a week, and 25% of all full-time students are working full-time jobs. This means while athletes are working for their college or university the same amount of hours their peers are working at a part-time or full-time job, they're just not getting paid for it. And if you actually were to do the math, a college student working a minimum wage job here in Washington at $13.50 an hour, working between 30 to 35 hours a week, they would be making roughly $405 to $472.50 a week before taxes were taken out. That's roughly $1,620 to $1,890 a month that these athletes are missing out on. And that's making only minimum wage here in Washington. Considering most athletic scholarships are not full rides or 100% paid, this added income would greatly help for paying academic expenses and other costs. This would also allow these athletes to financially support themselves if need be, which would be greatly beneficial to athletes who come from low-income backgrounds who don't have the financial stability within their families. Another reason why the NCAA should pay their athletes is because they are straining their bodies both physically and mentally every time they play. College athletes are more susceptible to injuries due to their athletic schedules and play. Sports Illustrated author Ian McMahon claims 67% of a group of former Division I athletes sustained a major injury and 55% reported chronic injuries, a finding that was 2.5 times higher than those seen in non-athletes. These injuries are no joke either, often affecting many athletes for years to come or for the rest of their lifetimes once they're off the court or field. McMahon later states in the article, "The major injuries sustained while playing collegiate sports limit future activity levels and quality of life. 40% of Division I athletes were diagnosed with osteoarthritis after college, compared with the 24% of non-athletes that were diagnosed." That's a 16% increase, might I just point out. It's not just their physical bodies these athletes are putting on the line, though, but also their mental health. In the presentation, Identifying Stress Unique to College Athletes, Health Outcomes and Intervention, author Peter Ward explains, emerging evidence identifies stressors unique to the college athlete, related to physical and mental risks. Statistics indicate that 95% of male and 85% of female athletes report higher stress, compared to the 52% of non-athlete students. To coincide with Ward's findings, University of Wisconsin alum Liliana Hansen claims student athletes participating in the NCAA-sanctioned intercollegiate athletic programs found that of these student athletes, between 10 to 15% will experience psychological issues severe enough to warrant counseling. These statistics just further cement that athletes are sacrificing their mental well-being to succeed in their sports. The risks NCAA athletes take to fulfill their athletic roles and the toll taken on their mental health is yet another reason why they deserve to be paid. A common opposing opinion brought up by those who don't believe that these NCAA athletes should be paid is the one that if the NCAA pays their athletes, there will be more incentive to succeed in sports than in their academics. This is easy to refute because academics are already on the back burner for most NCAA athletes. With practices, workouts, travel time, games, and other team activities all adding up to 4 to 8 hours a day, 5 to 7 days a week, that adds up to 20 to 40 hours a week, which we previously stated. And 20 to 40 hours a week of just sports does not leave much time for academics. Herbie states, a 2015 survey found that athletes in the Pac-12 conference spent an average of 50 hours per week on their sports and were often too exhausted to study effectively. This means these athletes are barely scraping by academically, using any free time they might have just to stay afloat. Being paid to play would only motivate athletes to continue to be academically sound, since all colleges require a certain GPA to stay competing. To sum it up, the NCAA asks their athletes to sacrifice a great deal without being compensated properly, sacrificing their physical health, mental health, and education for the NCAA to greedily make millions without seeing a dime themselves. So next time you're rooting for your favorite college football team or tuning into a March Madness game, I want you to remember what you think those athletes are worth. Because unlike what the NCAA thinks, I'm sure the value isn't at zero.